Why did no one ever notice her? That question had followed Sarah Miller like a shadow. At 26, she had learned how to move in silence, how to do her job without leaving a mark. On the range she was just the quiet girl with the cart, cleaning stations, collecting brass, replacing paper targets for men who barely remembered her name. Invisible, forgettable, almost designed to disappear. But invisibility had its advantages. When no one expected you to matter, you could watch, you could learn. The morning sun was sharp that day, scattering across the naval base in clean golden beams. The rifles cracked in disciplined rhythm, echoing against the concrete controlled violence wrapped in precision. SEAL Team 8 was drilling again, their commander's voice cutting across the air with surgical authority. Sarah moved along the periphery, eyes down, hands steady, the role of maintenance specialist stitched neatly around her like a disguise. Still, she noticed things. The team's sniper was firing from the 1,000-yard line, his breathing strained. She caught it instantly, the same flaw the commander had noticed, but with another hidden detail too. His elbow placement, his shoulder torque, a minor imperfection but one that would drift his aim under fatigue. She thought it but didn't say it. She never did. Her grandfather had warned her. The rifle is just a tool. Your mind is the real weapon, but some minds will never let you prove it. She had been 11, lying prone on frozen Montana grass with a shortened Remington pressed into her shoulder. The man beside her, James "Ghost" I. Miller, had been more than a grandfather. He had been a mentor, a prophet in camouflage, a soldier carrying secrets that history had scrubbed from the record. She remembered the bite of the cold, the way her tiny lungs followed his cadence. Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 4, hold for 2. She could still hear the metallic ring of steel when her bullet struck 400 yards out, and his voice calling her "little ghost." That voice had lived inside her ever since. Back on the range, Sarah replaced targets, cart wheels crunching gravel, her face neutral. She carried herself small, unthreatening. They thought she was only maintenance. They didn't know she had already lived 100 hours of fire discipline on the ranch, or that she still kept her grandfather's wooden box in a hidden safe, the box carved with "Rangers lead the way." Inside, medals, photographs, journals written in a shorthand no one else could decipher. Sometimes she opened the journal just to run her fingers over the ink, tracing the codes, the cryptic notes on wind drift, density, altitude, rules of engagement. It was less a diary than a blueprint for surviving, for killing, for understanding the truth. She wondered if he had meant her to use it. That morning she thought only of keeping her head down, of staying invisible until something shifted. "Targets at 300, Chief called, gesturing to her. She nodded silently, replaced them, ignored the way their eyes slid past her as though she were just part of the equipment. But when she glanced back, frustration was mounting. His grouping at 1,000 was slipping, each shot pulling down at 7 o'clock. The commander diagnosed windage. She knew instantly it was. Her chest tightened. She should keep quiet, she always did. But's jaw clenched, his rifle set for another failed string. Her voice broke the silence. "Excuse me, sir, I don't mean to intrude, but—" The air stilled. She felt the heat of their stares, SEALs turning to a girl with a maintenance cart daring to speak. Her throat went dry, but she finished. "It's not windage. His elbow's too far under the rifle. Shoulder torque builds tension, pulls him down at 7 as he fatigues." For a beat no one spoke. Eyes narrowed, suspicion flaring, and you know this how exactly. Her heart drummed, but she kept her voice level. "I watch a lot, sir." Skepticism lingered, but the commander turned, ordered to adjust. 5 shots later the grouping had tightened. Even couldn't deny it. "Good eye," he muttered. Sarah lowered hers, already regretting opening her mouth. But inside a fire stirred. Recognition, if only for a flicker. She didn't have long to think about it. Jogged in, face sharp. Unusual activity at the east perimeter. Multiple unknowns approaching the fence. The words chilled the range, shifted instantly into combat command. Live ammo, cover, fire positions. SEALs moved with trained precision, but Sarah felt her own instincts ignite. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. The first explosion ripped the air, shattering the administrative building in the distance, a shockwave rolling across the ground. Secondary blasts followed, then gunfire, sharp, overlapping, organized. Not random, not sloppy, planned. "Contact!" screamed, his radio sputtering with chaos. Bullets raked the range, dust spraying. SEALs took cover, returning fire, but the ridge to the north erupted too, interlocking fields trapping them down. Sarah's body dove behind a maintenance wall, heart hammering, yet her mind was cold, calculating. They were pinned, two already wounded. Reinforcements at least 15 minutes out, too long. She saw what the SEALs couldn't. A third group moving low through the drainage culvert, flanking behind. If they made it through, the team would be crushed in a crossfire. Sarah's breath steadied. Years of drills in Montana returned with surgical clarity. She had no weapon, but she knew where one was. The demonstration locker. She sprinted, unseen in the chaos, keys trembling in her hand. The lock turned, and there it was. The M110 sniper rifle, magazines already loaded. She inspected it in seconds, bolt cycle, optics, suppressor, ammunition check. Her hands moved on their own as though guided by her grandfather's memory. The culvert attackers were 300 yards out. Moving cautiously, weapons up, seconds from changing everything. Sarah dropped to prone, crate for rest, cheek welded, breath slowing. Wind negligible. Moving target, half-body lead. She centered crosshairs. Exhale, squeeze. The rifle cracked, muffled under suppressor. First man dropped. Second confused, spinning. Second shot, precise, chest collapse. Third man darted, too slow. Third shot, silence. 3 threats gone in 15 seconds. No time to feel. No time to process. The ridge, 600 yards, uphill incline. Her grandfather's lessons sang in her blood. Cosine angle, wind drift, right to left at 8 miles per hour. Adjust, compensate, calculate, fire. One hostile down, adjust, fire another, systematic, efficient, cold. On the ground, the SEALs felt the shift, enemy fire thinning. Muttered, "Someone's out there, advanced QRF maybe." But eyes tracked, and he saw her. Saw the girl with the maintenance cart laying down cover with the calm brutality of a seasoned sniper. Miller. Disbelief rippled, followed his gaze, his world tilted. The girl who replaced targets was holding the line. And she wasn't done. An enemy on a rooftop swung a machine gun toward the SEALs. Too late. Sarah's shot hit at 700 yards, perfect arc, weapon clattering from his dead hands. Inside, she was trembling, but her body didn't betray it. She shifted positions with tactical grace, every movement a whisper of her grandfather's training. The battle raged, but its tide was turning because of her. And she hadn't even begun to explain who she really was. Who was she, really? That was the question now burning in Commander, mind as he pressed his team forward, using her covering fire like a shield. A civilian range technician, or something else entirely. Sarah didn't have the luxury of wondering what they thought of her. Her hands moved on instinct, the M110 snug in her shoulder, her cheek welded to the stock as if it had been made for her. She had trained for this moment in ways the SEALs couldn't imagine, but she had never once believed it would come. Not like this. Not here. The team advanced in 2 elements, bounding across open ground toward the weapons facility. Each time they rose to sprint, Sarah's fire cut down suppressing angles, carving space for them to move. Her trigger discipline was precise, not frantic bursts, not waste. Every round chosen, every shot meant. Still, a small voice inside whispered what her grandfather had once told her. "The first time you kill, little ghost, it will leave a mark, not on your hands, but here." He had tapped her chest. "You'll feel the weight of it in your breathing, in your silence." She tried not to think of it now, tried not to let the faces of those men linger in her vision. They weren't targets anymore. They were bodies, still, gone, and she had made them that way. A crack of gunfire snapped her focus back. A SEAL staggered Martinez, shrapnel scoring his leg. She adjusted her optics, traced the arc of enemy muzzle flash and pressed the trigger. The hostile fell back, rifle clattering from his hands. Voice barked over the comms. Miller, maintain overwatch. Eastern perimeter, suppress and hold. She almost froze. He had said her name, not as a dismissal, not as a technician, but as part of his command. Yes, sir, she whispered into the radio. Her voice calm, professional, a tone she hadn't used in years. Inside the weapons facility, the SEALs found chaos. 2 security guards down, blood slick against tile. Shell casings everywhere. Hostiles had pushed deep, hunting for the data center. Signaled, breach clear. Sarah could only watch from outside, crosshairs steady on windows, her world narrowed to potential movement. Minutes later, muffled explosions shook the building, followed by short bursts of fire. Then silence. The radio clicked. Data center secure, hostiles neutralized. Sarah exhaled, her body trembling only now after. She rolled her shoulders, forced her breath to slow. Her finger brushed the trigger again, ready, but the fight had shifted. She didn't realize was approaching until his shadow crossed her. He stopped a few feet away, staring at the rifle in her hands, then at her face. Miller, he said flatly, I think you owe me an explanation. Her eyes met his. For the first time in 2 years, she didn't look away. My grandfather, she said softly, pulling a worn photograph from her pocket. James Ghost I. Miller. Recognition lit in eyes, sharp and almost reverent. Ghost I. A name whispered in special operations history, a sniper whose kills had rewritten battlefields. He had been a legend, but legends weren't supposed to have granddaughters hidden in plain sight. Sarah tucked the photo away before her hands could shake. He trained me, everything I know. Had limped over, disbelief written across his blood-streaked face. So what the hell are you doing cleaning ranges? Her voice hardened, because they wouldn't let me do anything else. For a moment no one spoke, then radio cut the silence. Captain Westfield's voice grim, command center now. Didn't argue, he nodded once to Sarah, stay close. The command center was a hive of panic, screens flashing feeds of smoke, sirens wailing faintly outside. Sarah walked in behind, feeling eyes burn into her. Whispers, the civilian girl, the sniper. Captain Westfield studied her as if she were an artifact unearthed from a forgotten war. Ms. Miller, you saved lives today. I just did what was necessary, she said, her voice steady though her pulse thundered. A man in a dark suit leaned forward. FBI, another in uniform, Defense Intelligence, both of them staring at her, weighing her. Your grandfather, the colonel said, his tone heavy, served under operations that officially never happened. Ghost Eye wasn't just a sniper. He was part of missions buried so deep even most generals don't know them. Sarah's breath caught. She had suspected. She had seen the redacted papers in his journals, the fragments of names, places, but to hear it spoken aloud. What does that have to do with today? She asked. The FBI agent slid a photograph across the table. A man beside her grandfather in the early 80s, standing near a helicopter. Frank Wilson, the name she didn't know but soon would. This man, the agent said, was reported killed in 1993, Somalia, yet one of the attackers carried his original military ID. Her fingers tightened on the photograph. That's impossible. No, the colonel rasped. That's classified, and whoever came after us today was looking for something connected to your grandfather's past. His eyes narrowed. Perhaps his journal. Her stomach dropped. The journal, the box hidden in her apartment. She hadn't told anyone. How could they know? Her instinct screamed to protect it, but gaze was on her, calm, grounding. He understood, and yet he urged her silently to answer. Yes, she admitted finally, he kept one. The colonel's voice sharpened. We need it. Her hand pressed against her chest as though shielding the memory of her grandfather's handwriting. No, not without me. You wouldn't even be able to read it. His codes, his shorthand, they're not for you. Tension thickened. The FBI agent leaned forward but cut in, his voice firm. She goes with us. She interprets, non-negotiable. Westfield studied the two of them, then gave a slow nod. Fine, but move fast. If today was just the beginning, we don't have time to waste. When they left the command center, Sarah's legs felt heavy, each step carrying her deeper into something she had never wanted but had always known was waiting. Drove. Sarah sat in silence, the city blurring past. The journal pulsed in her mind like a beacon. She thought of her grandfather's warning. There will be things I couldn't tell you, little ghost. Things I left for you to discover only when you're ready. Was she ready, or had she been dragged into a storm she couldn't survive? As they turned onto her street, her body stiffened. Something was wrong, lights in her apartment glowing. She never left them on. Her voice came low, certain. We're compromised. Didn't question it. He swung the car past, circled the block, scanning with the calm of a man who had lived through ambushes. Through binoculars, he spotted nothing obvious, but Sarah knew. She could feel it. Maintenance access, she whispered, through the garage. They moved as a unit, fluid and precise. FBI agent Thomas tense but controlled. Sarah's instincts sharp, pulse tight. Up the stairs, third floor, outside her door, silence. Then faint, unmistakable, drawers sliding open. Someone was inside. Gestured, weapon drawn. Sarah's chest ached with the weight of choice. Stay back, he signaled, but she shook her head. My apartment, my grandfather's legacy. 3, 2, 1. Kicked the door open. Sarah followed, her body alive with adrenaline, scanning with the precision her grandfather had drilled into her. The man in the bedroom was already moving, trained, professional, suppressed pistol raised, his voice calm, almost mocking. Commander, I've been expecting you. Sarah's breath caught. She knew that face from the photograph. You, she whispered, Wilson. He removed his cap, revealing himself fully, weathered, hardened, very much alive. And suddenly, the story of her grandfather, of Somalia, of betrayal, of secrets buried for 30 years, cracked open before her eyes. How do you face a ghost that shouldn't exist? Sarah's hands trembled on instinct, though she forced them steady at her sides. The man standing in her bedroom was supposed to be dead. The photo from 1982 had shown him beside her grandfather, younger, confident, alive. But that was decades ago. And now here he was, lean, gray-haired, eyes alert with the restless burn of someone who had never stopped looking over his shoulder. Frank Wilson, said flatly, weapon leveled, voice hard. The man inclined his head, unbothered by the muzzle pointed at his chest. Once upon a time, yes, though I haven't used that name in years. Sarah swallowed, her pulse thick in her throat. You knew my grandfather. I didn't just know him, Wilson replied, his gaze softening as it shifted toward her. He was my brother-in-arms, one of the only men I ever trusted, and he trusted me with something he never told anyone else. The words should have steadied her, but instead they twisted in her stomach. Trust, secrets. Ghost Eye had carried so many of both. How much had he hidden even from her? Didn't lower his weapon. You'll forgive me if I don't take the word of a man reported killed in Somalia, while his ID shows up on one of my attackers today. Wilson's jaw tightened. Those weren't my men. Whoever stormed used my identity to cover their tracks, and they were after one thing. His eyes found Sarah again. The journal. Her chest clenched. How do you know about that? Because James told me. Wilson's voice softened, carrying something raw beneath it. In the last weeks of his life, he confided in me, said he documented everything. Names, dates, the truth that others had tried to erase. He wanted it safe. He wanted you safe. Sarah's breath faltered. The journal, her grandfather's handwriting, every line etched with weight and secrecy. She had guarded it like a relic, never certain whether it was treasure or curse. Now this man wanted it. "Why should I believe you?" she demanded. "For all I know, you could have been behind the attack. You could be lying." Wilson didn't flinch. Instead, he said quietly, "When you were a child, he called you little ghost. He told me once that you could walk through the woods without bending a single blade of grass. He said you were his greatest pride." The detail pierced her like a blade. That name, Little Ghost, had never left the walls of their ranch. She had thought it belonged only to her and her grandfather. Hearing it from Wilson's mouth was like having the past pulled violently into the present. Shifted, weapon still steady, that proves nothing. "No," Wilson admitted, "but this might." He turned his right arm, revealing a scar crescent-shaped, pale against weathered skin. "Your grandfather had one too. He told people it was from shrapnel in Lebanon, but it was. It was a training accident in Montana, 1959, a rifle misfire. We laughed about it for years." Sarah's breath caught again. She remembered tracing her grandfather's scar with her finger when she was small, asking about it, believing the story about shrapnel. He had lied. Why? To protect her, or because truth was heavier than lies? Her mind reeled. Who was Wilson, really? And why did her grandfather trust him with things he never trusted her to know? Movement in the hallway. Agent Thomas appeared, weapon drawn. "Federal agent, drop it." Cut him off, voice sharp. "Stand down, Thomas. Situation's contained." Contained. The word felt laughable. Nothing about this was contained. Secrets were bleeding into the room, spilling from decades of silence. Wilson slowly lowered his pistol to the floor, sliding it away. His hands lifted, deliberate calm. "I'm not here to hurt anyone, quite the opposite, but you need to understand knows now. He knows about her. He knows about the journal. That means time is short." The name struck like a hammer. Colonel, the man from the briefing, the one who had studied Sarah with too much interest, the one who had spoken of Eagle Falls with clinical detachment. "What does he have to do with this?" Sarah asked. Wilson's eyes hardened. "Everything. He was our handler for Eagle Falls in '80. He was the one who left us exposed in Somalia in '93. He buried the truth then, and now he's trying to bury it again. If he gets that journal before we can use it, everything your grandfather protected dies with it." Sarah felt the walls of her apartment press closer. She turned toward the closet, hands moving almost without thought. Baseboard loose, safe revealed. She entered the code, her grandfather's birthday, and the lock clicked open. The wooden box emerged. Rangers lead the way, carved into its lid, worn by years of touch. Her fingers lingered on the grooves, a prayer, a memory. Then she lifted the journal out. Leather-bound, edges frayed, the ink inside dense with her grandfather's shorthand. Wilson's eyes locked on it, reverent. "That's it, 30 years of truth." But Sarah's hand pressed protectively over it. "If it's as dangerous as you say, then it's not just yours to use. It's mine to guard. My grandfather left it to me, not you." Spoke for the first time in minutes, his voice steady but edged. "If is what you say he is, we can't stay here. Move now." As if on cue, the sound of engines rumbled outside. Sarah darted to the window, blinds tilted just enough. Black SUVs, doors opening, men in tactical gear spilling out. Cursed under his breath, "Government plates." Wilson hissed, "He's moving faster than I thought." Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. "What do we do?" Was already calculating, scanning exits. Roof access, maintenance ladder, 8-foot gap to the next building. "You said your grandfather made you map every escape route." "Yes." "Then we trust him one more time." Thomas shifted uneasily, his radio crackling with chatter from the outer perimeter. "I can stall them for a few minutes, claim jurisdiction. But once people flash credentials, local PD will stand down. You'll be on your own." "Buy us what time you can," ordered. "That's all we need." Sarah shoved the journal into a backpack, heart pounding. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her head. Always know your way out before you walk in. She hadn't realized how much those words would matter until now. They moved fast, ladder to the roof, metal clanging softly under boots. Sarah climbed first, backpack tight against her. Wilson followed, grunting softly but steady. Came last, weapon ready. The evening air was cool against her face, a sharp contrast to the fire in her chest. Across the alley, the next rooftop loomed. 8 feet, muttered, doable. Sarah didn't hesitate. She ran, jumped, landed in a roll that her grandfather had drilled into her bones. Wilson followed, surprisingly agile, his decades not dulling his precision. Was halfway to the edge when the roof access door below them banged open. Tactical boots stormed through. 2 agents burst onto the roof, rifles raised. Federal agents, drop it. Didn't slow. He launched himself across the gap, bullets snapping behind him, shattering rooftop gravel. He landed hard, shoulder rolling, weapon snapping up. Go, he barked, his voice steel. Get the journal out. Sarah's heart wrenched. Every instinct screamed not to leave him, not to abandon the man who had seen her when no one else had. But Wilson's hand gripped her arm, urgent, insistent. He's a SEAL, little ghost. This is what he does. The best way to honor him is to protect what matters. Her chest heaved. She hated it, but she nodded. Together, she and Wilson disappeared through a maintenance hatch on the adjacent building, descending into shadow as gunfire erupted above. The journal thumped against her back with every step, heavy, alive. Somewhere deep inside, Sarah realized nothing would ever be the same. How far could she run before the past caught her? Sarah's boots pounded the stairwell, echoing in metallic clangs as she and Wilson descended the maintenance shaft of the adjacent building. Every step felt louder than it should, every breath a battle to stay quiet when adrenaline screamed otherwise. The backpack pressed against her spine, the journal inside like a second heartbeat. Heavy, dangerous, alive. Wilson moved behind her with surprising speed for his age, his breath steady, controlled. Not like a man running for the first time in years, but like one who had been running his whole life. They burst through a service door into a dimly lit residential corridor. An elderly woman startled, clutching her grocery bag as she froze in the doorway. Wilson smiled with disarming ease, shifting his tone as if flipping a switch. Maintenance, he said warmly, his posture softened, his weapon hidden. Roof check, all clear now. The woman blinked, then nodded slowly, suspicion in her eyes but no alarm in her voice. She shuffled past. Sarah watched her go, her chest tight. How many times had her grandfather worn that same mask? Calm, ordinary, harmless, while carrying secrets that could topple governments. Where now? She whispered. Wilson scanned the lobby through the glass doors, eyes never still, every angle. They'll have the perimeter sealed. SUVs, teams, doesn't leave holes, which means, he pointed across the street, a delivery truck, engine idling, driver leaning against the door with a phone. We take that. Sarah hesitated. That's stealing. It's survival, Wilson replied. Your grandfather taught you the difference. Her chest tightened again. Ghost Eye had always blurred those lines, and now she was living in his shadow. They timed the crossing, waited for a gap in the SUVs sweeping the block, then sprinted. Sarah's heart hammered as she vaulted the curb, yanking the driver's door open. Wilson's hand moved faster than hers, pulling the man from the cab with a firm but careful grip. Out, walk away, now. His voice carried command, not cruelty. The driver, stunned, stumbled back, hands raised. Seconds later, they were inside, engine growling, tires screeching as Wilson floored it. Sarah's hands clenched the seat. She glanced at him, jaw set. How many times have you done this? Wilson's eyes flicked to the mirror, then back to the road. Too many to count. And how many of those times were for the right reasons? He didn't answer. The city blurred past gas stations, strip malls, palm trees whipping in the wind. Behind them, black SUVs fanned out, lights flashing, radios crackling. Sarah twisted in her seat, catching glimpses of their pursuit. "They're closing," she said. Wilson smirked faintly, his eyes narrowing with an operator's calm. "Then we make them chase ghosts." He swung the truck hard into an industrial lot, tires screaming, weaving between stacked shipping containers. The SUVs followed, but the maze slowed them. Wilson killed the headlights, cutting left, then right, until the truck skidded to a halt behind a line of rusting trailers. "Out," he barked, "on foot." Sarah grabbed the backpack, slinging it tight. Her legs trembled, but she forced them steady. They moved quickly through the shadows, slipping into a drainage tunnel that stank of rust and runoff. The tunnel was dark, damp, claustrophobic. Sarah's breath echoed too loudly, bouncing off the walls. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice hushed. Wilson's reply was flat. "Somewhere won't think to look. For now, we buy time." Sarah hugged the backpack closer, the leather journal pressed against her chest. Every instinct screamed to open it now, to know what her grandfather had hidden, to understand why men would kill for it. But Wilson's words echoed, "Not here, not now." She bit down on her impatience, the questions clawing at her throat. Why Somalia? Why Eagle Falls? Why? Silence filled the tunnel except for their footsteps. In that silence, Sarah's thoughts spiraled back to. The last image she had seen was him diving across the rooftop gap, bullets stitching the air around him. His voice had cut like steel. "Go, get the journal out." Had he survived, or had she just abandoned him to die? Her grandfather's voice whispered from memory. "Sometimes, little ghost, you can't save everyone. Sometimes the mission is the only thing you carry out alive." But missions were abstract. Wasn't. He had looked her in the eye, treated her not as invisible, but as part of his fight. The thought of leaving him bled guilt into every step. She wiped her face roughly. No time for that now. At last the tunnel opened into a storm drain near the edge of the city. Wilson scanned, then gestured. "Clear. Let's move." They emerged into the night air, headlights distant on the freeway, sirens faint but hunting. Wilson turned, his expression sharpened by moonlight. "We need to talk." Sarah's jaw clenched. "About what?" "About your grandfather," he said, "and about the men who died because of." The words landed heavy. Sarah felt the journal pressing into her ribs, as though it too was listening. Wilson's gaze fixed on her. "Do you know what happened in Somalia, 1993? Sarah shook her head. "He never talked about it. He said some missions were shadows, that's all." Wilson's voice roughened. "We were sent in under false pretenses, target extraction. Intelligence suggested local militias, but when we got there, it was a trap, not random, deliberate. Someone had leaked our route. Someone had traded our lives for politics." Sarah's stomach turned. Wilson nodded once. "He was the handler. He fed us into the fire. Good men died. And when it was over, they declared us dead too. Easier than admitting betrayal. James survived. I did too, but I vanished. Ghosts are harder to kill when no one admits they exist." Sarah's throat tightened. Her grandfather had carried that weight his entire life and never told her. Why? To protect her, or to protect himself? Wilson studied her, his voice softening. "He raised you well. I can see it in how you move, how you think. He prepared you because he knew this day might come." Her eyes burned, anger and grief colliding. "Then why didn't he tell me everything? Why leave me half blind?" "Because knowing too much too early," Wilson said quietly, "would have painted a target on your back before you were ready." She looked away, her fists tightening on the straps of her pack. The truth felt like betrayal, even if it was meant as love. Before she could speak again, the distant growl of engines echoed down the street. Wilson's head snapped up. "Move," he ordered. They sprinted into the night, the journal bouncing against Sarah's spine, the weight of generations of secrets pressing her forward. Behind them, the hunt had only just begun. What truths are too heavy to be written, and yet too dangerous to be left unspoken? Sarah sat in the dim glow of a single lantern, the journal heavy in her lap. They had taken shelter in a forgotten maintenance shed on the outskirts of the city, corrugated metal walls, oil stains, the scent of rust. Wilson stood at the doorway, watching the night with the patience of a man who trusted neither time nor silence. Her hands trembled as she opened the leather cover. The pages smelled of dust, of Montana winters, of long nights when her grandfather had bent over these same notes under lamplight. The handwriting was precise, sharp, yet riddled with codes and abbreviations only she could read. The first page hit like a blade. If you're reading this, it means I failed to keep it from you. Forgive me, little ghost. Some truths weigh too much for a child, but I trained you because one day the shadows would come looking again. And when they do, you'll need to be more than invisible. You'll need to be ready. Sarah's breath caught. He had known this day would come. Her fingers flipped through. Coordinates, names, operations half redacted even in his own shorthand. Margins filled with his thoughts, doubts, regrets, fragments of truths too raw to speak aloud. Wilson moved closer, his voice low. What does it say? Sarah's eyes scanned quickly. He talks about Eagle Falls, but it's not just about Somalia. It goes back further. Lebanon, Nicaragua, missions they said were never ours. Missions where soldiers went missing and the paperwork buried them. Her throat tightened. One line underlined twice, always walked away clean. Wilson cursed softly, his jaw tightening. I knew it. But Sarah wasn't finished. Her hand froze on another passage. Frank still believes in the oath. I envy him, but an oath given to liars is just another chain. Her eyes lifted to Wilson, uncertain. He read her expression, then looked away. His silence spoke louder than denial. You didn't tell me everything, she whispered. Wilson's voice was gravel. I told you enough. The lantern flickered, shadows crawling across the walls. Sarah shut the journal, hugging it to her chest. The weight of her grandfather's truth pressed against her ribs, suffocating yet undeniable. And then footsteps outside. Wilson's weapon snapped up instantly, eyes narrowing. He motioned her to silence. The footsteps were cautious, deliberate, not men storming in, but someone who knew how to approach quietly. The door creaked open. A figure stepped inside. Sarah's breath stopped. His uniform was torn, dirt smeared across his face, but he was alive. His eyes locked on her, relief flashing before discipline masked it. You made it, Sarah whispered, voice breaking despite herself. He gave a curt nod. Barely, two of his men didn't. He glanced at Wilson, the tension sharp. We don't have long, he's tightening the noose. Wilson didn't lower his weapon. And how do I know you didn't lead him here? Gaze was ice, because if I had, you'd already be dead. The silence crackled. Finally, Sarah stepped between them, journal clutched like a shield. Stop. We don't have time for suspicion. Is coming for this, and if we keep fighting each other, he'll win. Exhaled slowly, lowering his rifle, though his eyes never left Wilson. Fair, but if we're running, we need a plan, and we need allies. Allies? Sarah asked. People doesn't control, said. There are still some, scattered, buried, but loyal. They'll move if they know the truth, but we need evidence, proof. Sarah glanced at the journal. It's all here. Not enough, Wilson countered. Pages in a dead man's handwriting won't survive in court. They'll call it forgery, conspiracy. You need something harder, recorded comms, satellite logs, signature where he thought no one was looking. Sarah frowned. And where do we find that? Answered, voice steady. Inside Eagle Falls. The name chilled the room. Wilson's face darkened. That facility was buried for a reason. Exactly, said. Which means kept it alive for himself. We get inside, we get the files, we prove the journal isn't just memory, it's evidence. Sarah's chest tightened. Breaking into a ghost facility guarded by the same men hunting them was madness. And yet, it was the only path forward. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Truth doesn't survive in silence, little ghost. It has to be carried, even through fire. She clenched her fists around the journal. Then we go to Eagle Falls. The air felt heavier after she said it, as though the shadows themselves had heard. Not at once, decisive. We move before dawn, won't expect us to come at him head on. Wilson gave a bitter chuckle. Head on, you do know, he's been waiting 30 years for this, he'll expect everything. But Sarah caught something in Wilson's voice, not just bitterness, fear. And she wondered if her grandfather had Wilson's belief in the oath, had Wilson Ghost Eye's faith in something else, or had both of them been broken by the same betrayal, just in different ways. The lantern dimmed. Outside, the city buzzed faintly with distant sirens. The night seemed endless. Sarah lay awake on the cold concrete floor, the journal tucked beneath her arm like a lifeline. Sleep didn't come. Her mind replayed every shot she had fired, every face she hadn't meant to remember but did, and layered beneath it, the growing storm of Eagle Falls. At some point, voice broke the silence, low and reflective. Do you regret it, pulling that trigger? Sarah turned toward him, her throat tight. I don't know. I regret that I had to, but not that I did. If I hadn't, your men would be dead. Nodded slowly, eyes unreadable in the dim light. That's the truth most people never understand. It's not about pride. It's about carrying what no one else will. His words struck something deep in her, something raw. She had always thought her invisibility was a curse, but maybe it was armor. Maybe being unseen meant she could see. She closed her eyes, clutching the journal. Tomorrow they would walk into Eagle Falls, into her grandfather's secrets, into his trap. And she didn't know which would break her first, the bullets, or the truth. How do you break into a place designed never to exist? The road to Eagle Falls wound through desert scrub and jagged hills, the landscape bare except for the scars of forgotten training sites. Dawn stretched pale light over the horizon, painting the sky in muted orange. Sarah sat in the back of the truck, the journal clutched tight, her eyes fixed on the horizon as though the answers were hidden there. Wilson drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel, studied a topographic map spread across his knees, lips tight, eyes sharp. Every mile closer, Sarah felt her grandfather's ghost pressing against her, reminding her that this place had nearly killed him, and that it might finish what Somalia hadn't. Eagle Falls, Wilson muttered, buried into a hillside, guarded by men who swear they don't exist, most never make it past the second perimeter. Glance back at Sarah. You ever fire under pressure before yesterday? Her jaw tightened. Not like that, but I was trained for it. Wilson's eyes flicked to her in the mirror, skeptical yet grudgingly respectful. Ghost Eye didn't waste bullets. If he passed his craft to you, then you'll hit what you aim at. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't want to admit the truth that every time she had pulled the trigger yesterday, she had heard her grandfather's voice guiding her. But he wasn't here now. Only his words, his scars, his silence. The truck rolled off the main road, tires crunching over gravel. Ahead, a bluff rose from the desert floor, its rocky face jagged, natural. But Sarah's trained eye caught the seams, faint, deliberate. The hillside was no rock formation. It was camouflage. That's it, Wilson said. Perimeter sensors start about a quarter-mile out. Motion, thermal, seismic. They'll know we're coming before we're close. So we don't give them time to prepare, replied. Fast and quiet. Sarah, you're overwatch. High ground, East Ridge. Wilson and I will breach. Sarah stiffened. No, I go in with you. Eyes narrowed. Inside will be close quarters, chaotic. We need you where you can cover angles, keep their heads down. Her chest burned. She wanted to argue, to demand her right to stand beside them, but the journal pressed against her ribs like an answer. Her grandfather had always told her, the best shooters don't stand in the light. They shaped the battlefield from the shadows. She exhaled slowly. Fine, overwatch. They parked the truck behind a ridge concealed by brush. The plan was crude, reckless, but it was all they had. Sarah climbed the eastern rise, crawling on her belly until she had a clear line of sight across the camouflaged hillside. Through her scope, she scanned for movement. Nothing. The desert lay still, but stillness was never safety. Her radio crackled softly. Voice, on approach, mark any tangos. Copy, she whispered. Minutes stretched. Her breath slowed, heartbeat sinking to the rhythm of the scope. Then a flicker, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. A man crouched near a rock outcrop, camouflaged but careless. Contact, north slope 30 yards, she whispered. Copy. A moment later and Wilson ghosted forward, silent and precise. The guard never saw them. One strike, one fall, and the silence returned. Sarah's hands tightened on the rifle. Every move they made below depended on her eyes, her trigger, her steadiness. She was their shield now. Wilson reached the hillside wall, ran his hands over the rock, then pressed a sequence of points. A disguised panel clicked. A door slid open, seamless and silent. Sarah's chest constricted. Eagle Falls was real. Not rumor, not ghost story, real. And Wilson disappeared inside. Minutes passed, too many. Sarah shifted, scanning the desert, every nerve on fire. Then movement, more guards, 3 of them converging on the entrance. Her breath froze. If they reached the panel, and Wilson would be trapped inside. Her finger settled on the trigger. She exhaled. 1, 2, 3. Each shot broke the dawn. Each body fell in silence. Her stomach twisted, but there was no time to feel. The radio crackled again. Voice low but urgent. We're in. Multiple corridors. Fingerprints everywhere. Files, terminals, but we'll need time to pull data. Sarah's whisper was steady. You have it, doors clear. She adjusted her scope, scanning for more. But her mind betrayed her, dragging her back into the journal's words. Eagle Falls is where it began, where truth was rewritten in shadows. What truth? And why had her grandfather feared it enough to hide it? Inside, and Wilson moved deeper. The facility was a maze of sterile halls and steel doors, old yet humming with power. Instinct screamed at him this place wasn't abandoned. It was alive. Server room ahead, Wilson said, his voice tight. But this isn't just storage. Look at the walls. Scan them, photos, murals almost. Operations pinned in frames, names scrawled beneath them. Some he recognized. Some had never been spoken aloud, and in too many's name appeared. This is his trophy room, muttered. They pressed into the server chamber. Banks of machines whirred, blue light casting cold shadows. Wilson sat at a terminal, hands moving with surprising speed. He pulled a drive from his pocket, slotting it in. If kept records, they'll be here. Kept watch, rifle steady, move fast. But before Wilson could finish, alarms blared. Red light washed the room. Sarah's radio crackled with sudden panic. You're burned. 2 trucks inbound, west side, fast. Copy, hold them off as long as you can, barked. Sarah swung her scope, finding the vehicles cresting the ridge. Dust trailed behind them. She exhaled, squeezed. Tires burst, sparks flying. Men spilled out, rifles raised. She fired again, cutting them down one by one, but there were too many. Her radio hissed. Voice strained. We've got what we need. Wilson's pulling the files. Extraction. Sarah's pulse hammered. Nowhere clean, you're boxed. Silence, then voice firm. Then we cut our way out. The hillside erupted with gunfire. Echoes tore through the desert. Sarah fired until her barrel smoked, her breath ragged. Wilson cursed over the comms, demanding more time. Voice barked commands, steady even in chaos. And then a new voice cut through the radio. Calm, cold, familiar. Enough games, Miller. Sarah's blood froze. It was. You think you're carrying your grandfather's legacy, his voice said, smooth with authority. But you're only carrying his mistakes. Hand over the journal and maybe I'll let them live." Her hands shook, the rifle wavering. His words pierced deeper than bullets. Mistakes. Was that all her grandfather had left her? The desert roared with gunfire. The facility shook with alarms. Sarah's voice came low, defiant despite the tremor in her chest. "You'll never have it." Silence followed, then laugh cold and hollow. "We'll see." How long could she carry a secret before it crushed her? The scope burned against Sarah's cheek, the steel biting into her skin, but she didn't move. Every muscle in her body screamed for release. Every breath rattled with tension. The desert floor below erupted in chaos, SUVs smoking, men crawling from wreckage, others advancing with rifles braced. She was one shooter against a wave. And still she held. Through the comms, voice cut steady. "Wilson's got files, 3 minutes more. Hold, Miller, just hold." Her trigger finger squeezed, recoil bruising her shoulder. A man dropped. She shifted, exhaled, squeezed again. Another down. The journal pressed hard against her ribs where the backpack straps dug into her skin. She almost felt her grandfather's hand on her shoulder guiding her. Patience. Breathe. See what others don't. But patience wasn't infinite. Her radio hissed alive. His voice again, calm, too calm. "Sarah Miller, little ghost. You think you're honoring him, but all you're doing is rewriting his failure. Do you know why your grandfather really walked away? Do you know what broke him?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to block him out, but the words snaked under her skin. "He saw what I see now. A girl desperate to matter. A soldier's shadow pretending to be the soldier. But you'll never be him. You'll break like he did." Her hands shook. She fought to steady the rifle. Another shot cracked. Another body fell. But words clawed inside, planting doubt like shrapnel. Then over the comms, voice, hard, fierce. "Don't listen to him, Miller. You're not his ghost. You're your own." Something hot surged in her chest. Not rage, defiance. She exhaled, pressed her cheek harder to the stock, and whispered, "Copy." The hillside shook with more engines, more men, more fire. Sarah's shots thinned them but couldn't stop the tide. A rocket whooshed, slamming into the ridge near her. The blast hurled her onto her back, ears ringing, scope cracked. She coughed, blood on her lips, sand grinding into her skin. Through the ringing, she heard his voice again, closer now, almost intimate. "You can't stop this, Sarah. That journal doesn't hold salvation. It holds damnation. It's every mistake your grandfather made, every truth that killed men who trusted him. Hand it over and you can finally stop carrying his sins." Her hand fumbled for the rifle, broken scope useless. The weight of the journal seared her spine. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw it into the desert and end this hunt. But then she remembered on the roof, his voice steel as he told her to run. She remembered the SEAL pinned at the range who had lived because she pulled the trigger. She remembered her grandfather's scar, the way he had called her little ghost not as insult, but as pride. She spat blood into the sand and pushed herself up. "If these are his sins," she whispered, "then I'll carry them." She braced the rifle against a rock, naked eye on iron sights, and waited. Inside Eagle Falls and Wilson were drowning in alarms. Red light painted every corridor. Wilson's hands flew across the terminal, sweat dripping down his temples. "I've got half the files, but it's massive terabytes. We can't move it all." "Take what nails?" snapped, eyes on the door. Gunfire echoed from deeper halls. They were being closed in. Wilson cursed. "It's not just there are others, names, operations linked to half the chain of command." Jaw clenched. "We don't have the luxury to save the world, just enough to burn him." At last Wilson yanked the drive free, shoving it into his vest. "Got it. Then we move." They burst from the server room, gunfire chewing the walls around them. Fired short, controlled bursts, clearing corners with brutal precision. Wilson moved slower, grunting, but his eyes stayed sharp. At the exit they froze. The camouflage door had sealed, steel locked, no way out. Backup plan, growled. Wilson pointed upward. Maintenance shafts, old, narrow, but they'll take us to surface vents. Gave a grim nod. Move. They climbed. The shafts were tight, suffocating. Metal groaned under weight. Behind them, boots pounded closer. Voices shouted. Fired blindly down the shaft, echoes deafening. Finally, they burst into moonlight, crawling from a vent 30 yards from the hillside. And there, they saw her. Sarah, battered, bloodied, rifle braced on iron sights, still holding the line alone. Wilson's breath caught. She's still up. Almost smiled. Of course she is. But then shadows moved on the ridge, figures flanking, a dozen men, and among them. He walked with calm authority, body armor fitting him like a uniform he'd never stopped wearing. His eyes locked on Sarah, and even from distance, she felt the weight of his gaze. "Enough, Sarah," called, voice carrying across the desert. "You can't hold both the gun and the truth. One will always betray the other." Sarah steadied her weapon, even as her body screamed with pain. "Then let it betray me." Smiled coldly. "So much like him, and like him you'll lose." Behind him, the men raised their rifles. Sarah exhaled, raised his weapon from the vent. Wilson braced beside him. For a moment, 3 figures aligned, one ghost student, one soldier, one survivor, against a tide of shadows. And the desert held its breath. What do you do when the truth is heavier than the bullet in the chamber? The desert stilled around her. Sarah's cheek pressed against the rifle's cold stock, but her vision blurred with blood and sweat. Ahead stood calm, a general without a flag, soldiers fanned wide across the ridge. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "You won't leave here alive with that journal," he said, "but you could leave alive without it." Sarah's pulse hammered. She felt the journal pressed against her back, hot as if it were burning her skin. Her grandfather's voice echoed from memory, "The oath is nothing without honor, and honor is nothing without truth." But what if truth only killed more people? Voice broke the stillness, hard as stone. "She's not handing you a damn thing." His eyes flicked toward him, then back to Sarah. "Of course he says that. Men like him are useful pawns, brave, disposable, but you still have a choice." The word stabbed her. Choice. Had her grandfather chosen wrong? Had hiding the journal only delayed the same bloodshed? Was she about to repeat his mistake? Wilson shifted beside, raising his pistol. His voice was gravel. "You don't know her, you do know James. You only know the mess you made." Smiled thinly. "I know him better than either of you. He broke because he believed men like me would answer for what we'd done. But no one ever answers. That's the secret you've been chasing. It was all for nothing." Sarah's throat burned. The soldiers around tightened their line, rifles raised. Whispered into calm's voice sharp, "Miller, pick your shot, make it count." Her finger settled on the trigger. The crosshairs wavered, then steadied. She had him. One squeeze and it would end. But words wormed in. "You'll never be him. You'll break like he did." Her grandfather's face flashed in her mind. Weathered, proud, but behind his eyes the weight he had carried, the weight she carried now. What if killing didn't end it? What if the system just replaced him with another shadow? Her breath shook. She whispered to herself, so faint only the desert heard, "I'm not his ghost." Then she shifted her aim, not his men. The shot cracked. One soldier fell, chaos rippling through the line, and Wilson erupted from the vent, rifles spitting fire. The desert exploded with gunfire, echoes slamming off stone. Dropped to cover, barking orders, fury etched on his face. Sarah kept firing, each round snapping bodies back, keeping and Wilson alive. But the numbers pressed. For every man she dropped, 2 more advanced. Bullets chewed rock inches from her face. She reloaded, hands slick with blood, vision narrowing. Then silence, a lull. Smoke drifted across the ridge and rose, alone now, rifle slung, hands open. He stepped into the open ground, unarmed but unbroken. Sarah's scope locked on him. His voice carried calm as ever. Go ahead, make yourself the executioner, finish what your grandfather couldn't. Her finger trembled on the trigger. This was it. One pull, one end. Voice shouted from below, desperate. Sarah, don't, he wants you to. Wilson's voice overlapped, harsh. Take the shot, he won't stop until you do. Her chest heaved, time slowed. She saw her grandfather writing by lantern, his hand shaking as he carved truths into leather pages. She saw herself at 10 years old, walking silently through the woods, his pride in his eyes when he called her little ghost. She saw on that rooftop, telling her she wasn't invisible anymore. And she saw not a monster, not a myth, just a man. A man who had built his throne on silence, knowing silence protected him more than bullets ever could. Her finger eased off the trigger. She stood, rifle hanging loose at her side, blood dripping from her lip. Her voice broke the silence, low but steady. No, I don't need to kill you. The truth already has. She yanked the journal from her pack, held it high so his men, what remained of them, dazed and wounded, could see. This is who you are. Pages and pages of names, operations, betrayals. Your signature in every shadow. You can shoot me, but this won't die. Not anymore. His mask cracked, just for a second, a flicker of fear. And in that flicker moved. One clean shot. Dropped, a dark bloom spreading across his chest. His body hit the dirt with the weight of 30 years of silence crashing down. The desert held still again. Sarah staggered, the journal heavy in her hand. She wanted to weep, but no tears came, only exhaustion. Climbed the ridge, sweat and blood streaking his face. His eyes met hers. Why didn't you pull it? She swallowed hard, because killing him would have been his ending, not mine. Wilson limped up beside them, face carved with grief and relief all at once. He looked down at its body, then back at Sarah. James was right. You were the only one who could carry it. The dawn broke fully then. Light spilled over the desert, painting the blood, the scars, the faces of the three who still stood. Sarah looked at the journal one last time before sliding it back into her pack. She wasn't ready to open all of it yet. Maybe she never would be. But for the first time, she understood what her grandfather had meant. Truth wasn't about saving everyone. It wasn't about erasing pain. It was about refusing to let silence win. As the wind swept across the ridge, she whispered the words she knew her grandfather would never hear, but needed to be spoken anyway. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And with that, she turned her back on Eagle Falls, walking into the rising sun, carrying the weight not as a curse, but as her choice.